lot of trial and error to decide. There were all kinds of interesting side stories, and some of them were in the script that, well, you read some versions of the script that had other stories. I mean, there was a really interesting story about the press in the United States. The press found out that 6 people had escaped. And you hear it very briefly. There's a scene in the CIA where somebody says, you know, somebody, one of the families talked, and the press knows, right? That had been a whole subplot in the movie about trying to stop the press from revealing this. And I thought it was a good part of the story, but when we really looked at the script and the movie, it took your attention away from the main plot, which is, are these people going to get out or not? You know, it was, so that had to fall away. There was more background on the character, on Tony Mendez. There was more, as I described before about CIA, there was a little bit more of, it was more of a redemption story, because you had more of a sense of the sins of the CIA and the things that he had done with in other places, right? And so finally getting these 6 people out felt, in some versions of the script, felt like much more of a redemption for Tony. Some of that fell away because as the movie went on and the tension built, anytime you detoured into the character, it felt like, oh God, what's going to happen? Like I don't want to take more time at that moment, right? And so the snowball kind of pushed some things aside. I don't know if they were the right decisions. You know, it might be a better movie if Tony's character were more developed. It might be a better movie if some of the subplots stayed. But in general, when you're in the editing room, the movie starts telling you what it wants to be. And the movie said, we can't, you know, the movie said, I won't wait for that, I won't wait for this, you know, just keep it moving. I think Ben is doing I think he did a director's cut, which I'd be interested to see. I haven't watched it yet, but I wonder if he's put scenes back, and if so, if they make the movie better or worse. Because sometimes director's cuts are great, and then sometimes you watch a director's cut and you think, oh, thank God that, you know.
That's not what came out.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about writers is that not too many people care. So
Except in Uruguay, where everybody knows who you are.
Well, thanks to Teresa and the big banners. You know, there's a joke, which is a true joke, saying that there are more animals that have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame than writers,
That's so
it's
sad.
true, yeah. You know, or there was an actress who was so stupid she went to Hollywood and slept with the writers. You know,
Oh.
you know, because as a writer, you know, you're not the most. That's a good thing, right? Because when you're a writer, you have to be able to observe, and you have to. I mean, for all artists, you have to be a bit of an outsider, right? I think it must be very hard when people get famous and they compromise their ability to be an outsider. So, you know, I even say to Ben, I mean, Ben Affleck has struggled with that, right? I mean, he's had good times and bad times, but he has to deal with, I get to go ride on the subway and just watch people, right? Ben can't really do that because, you know, and so he ends up impoverished a little bit, you know, and we talk about that. In LA, he has to live a life behind a fence, you know, because if he goes out with his kids, photographers follow it and whatever. So anyway, the good thing is I think I still do have my privacy and I get to be in New York, where in New York, you know, like any great cities, like London or Paris or Montevideo or wherever, like. You have an anonymity in the city, and that's a good thing, right? Because it allows you to just watch. And I think watching is the most important thing you could do, whether you're painting or you're writing or whatever.
Here.
That's what we would like for him to shoot.
Well, yeah. In all seriousness, there is a movie that I would love to set here, because the great thing about here is that depending on the street, you could feel like you're in Paris, or you could be in New York, or you could be in Mexico, or Buenos Aires, or Montevideo, and like all the streets sort of have their own architectural feeling. So this is a great place to shoot, I think. But I also would love to make a movie in New York, just because I live there, and I you know, and you have a familiarity with your own city that you never have anywhere else, right? You see things that other people don't see. You know what the light is like at a certain hour of the morning in a certain part of town, right? You know the people, you know the subway, you know the buses, and all those things, I think, make for a more interesting, make for more interesting movies. I love filmmakers like, well, you know, not only like Woody Allen, who has an intimate relationship with New York, but then, you know, filmmakers like the Dardenne brothers. You know the Dardennes? They're French-Belgian filmmakers, and they always shoot in the same part of the world because they know those cities so well, and they're so loving toward those environments, and you just think like that's a great thing, to be able to know a place well enough that you could not treat it like a tourist, but you could treat it like a native. So I would. Besides here, I would love to make a New York movie. I think so. We're you know, I just right before I came to Uruguay, I was in Los Angeles to talk to him about it. We're not. It's based on a book called Bunker Hill, which is about the beginnings of the American Revolution, you know, we're still figuring it out, but I think we're gonna try to do it, because we want to make a movie that we want to make a movie in which the American Revolution feels like a real violent revolution. You know, it feels gritty and, you know, sort of brutal and interesting. You know, because there aren't a lot of good movies about that. And of course, this book about the American Revolution is set in Boston, which is Ben's city, of course, and you know, anyway, this book is which is coming out at the end of the month. It's a more interesting look at that time than I've ever seen, and it isn't full of a lot of people in wigs and hats and stuff. It feels very dirty and you know, down there and interesting. So we're hoping that we can make it work. Thank you. I'm just so happy to get to talk to you guys. After this, I'm not going to talk about Argo anymore. I mean, because in New York, you know, people have said, do you want to do a screening? Do you want to do whatever? And I said, no, I don't really want to talk about Argo, but it's exciting for me to have my last events about Argo here, you know, with you guys, because it's much more interesting for me. And so thank you for listening and for the questions, really good questions.
Well, very nice.